Welcome to episode 60. Yes, episode 60 of the Practice Squad, a show where we talk about football, shoot the breeze, and make even the replacement refs cringe. I'm your host and fourth string quarterback, Jeremy, joined each and every week by my co host and backup long snapper, Joseph. How's it going, man?
Didn't think we'd make it to 60.
I think you said that when we hit 50, which was like not that long ago, so.
I think I did. So that's still true.
Keep your expectations for this show low because you don't know how we'll let you down. We're live right here on YouTube every Tuesday I'm just going to start saying 8:30 because that's pretty much what we've been doing at 8:30 p.m. Pacific. If you like what you hear and want to support us, don't hesitate to like, share, and if you're feeling extra generous, subscribe. But of course, you can like, share, and subscribe even if you think you could run this show better than us. So this week we've got our typical roundabout of segments, including our game of the week, a Who Wrecked Face this week segment, Darndest Things, a special segment, which you'll have to wait. We're going to keep that wrapped with a bow for now that you can untie with us later. We've got tricky picks, and of course, we're going to round out our show with our Week 7 game predictions. So let's dive right in because we've got a lot to talk about this week. A super exciting game of the week this week. So let's jump into our first segment of the night. Game of the week was going to be Cardinals at Browns. I think it was at Browns, wasn't it? And yes. That just the Cardinals kind of dominated in that game, so we decided to pick another one. The game we picked was Cowboys at Patriots, which was one of the two overtime games of the week. And we actually, Joseph and I were talking, it was on Sunday after a bunch of the games were over, and we realized that we were counting up all the overtime games because it felt like there has been a lot of overtime games so far this season. And I think we said that there have been, including this last week, there have been 8 overtime games so far this season.
I think it was 8, not including Seahawks.
That's right. So 9 total overtime games through 6 weeks, which means that we're averaging 1 1/3 overtime games per week, which feels like way more than we've had in recent years. I feel like on average we get an overtime game maybe once every other week or so. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So this feels like a lot of overtime games, and surprisingly there's only been I don't think there's any ties yet. There's been no ties. So that's interesting. You've got a lot more overtime games but less ties. In previous years we've had I think most years end up with at least one tie, and last year there were 2, I think, and there were none. There have been none so far this year. So interesting little tidbit there. But let's dive into our game of the week, which was Cowboys at Patriots. So Cowboys win this game on the road 35-29 in overtime, and as you've noticed a pattern forming of our games of the week the last few weeks, we've had lots of games with kind of crazy fourth quarters and obviously overtime games, which means that the game was tied, so that very competitive all around. So let's start off with the first quarter of this game. So the very first, right out of the gate, Cowboys decide to be aggressive, and they go for it on 4th and 1, and the Pats got to stop. So there's a turnover on downs, and then the Patriots are able to score a touchdown on their ensuing drive, their first drive of the quarter, the game, and they run it in and take the lead 7-0. Then there was a great pass from Dak Prescott on their next drive. He throws a pass that bounces off of Cedric Wilson, and then it's caught by Dalton Schultz. I think, is this the second week in a row we've had a ball that's bounced off of an offensive player into another offensive player's hands. I want to say this is the second time we've talked about that this season.
Was that last week's, or was that
it might have been the week before or a couple
weeks ago? Yeah, there was one that was crazy.
Yeah, so we've had a couple of those now. And then Dak gets a touchdown pass to Blake Jarwin, ties up 7-7. And then I didn't really have many notes for this next Patriots drive other than that Mac Jones threw a touchdown pass to Hunter Henry. I didn't feel like there was anything like super notable about that drive. So their Patriots lead 14-7 going into the second quarter. And then things start to get a little bit crazier. Dak throws a contested ball into the end zone. Looks like it might get caught, but then it kind of bounces off of Wilson's hands. I don't say bounce, like it just wasn't caught. And it's intercepted by Kyle Duggar. And then he decides to run it out, which he was at like a couple yards in to the end zone. He decides to run it out and makes it to the 25. I think kind of by luck, though. And I was going to ask you, Joseph, do you remember this play? The play where okay, so
yes, yeah.
I was just going to ask, do you think that the wiser decision would have been just to fall down?
Yes, because it was. Yeah. By the way, that someone's going to have a pick. That'd be a pick I'd want them to have. Kind of in the end zone, third down. He was trying to thread the needle, but it wasn't like it was a terrible throw, and it kind of bounced off of the defender, and then a different defender caught it. It wasn't the defender that it hit first who intercepted it. So he was already kind of going against the grain when he caught it. He had to like either slow down or turn around, and or just not have like momentum. Was like he caught it, running towards the ball. So yeah, you should just get down. He was in the end zone, get down. You're right. He didn't guarantee to get out. He had to get a nice run to make it just back to the 25 or 30 yard line. So in those situations, you don't have like a running start. They're filled ahead of you
because there were a couple receivers right there.
And the line of scrimmage, it was like the 19-yard line.
Something like that, yeah.
So like the rest of the Cowboys team is like there. Yeah. If this was like a Hail Mary or something, then might be a little different. But yeah, no, you gotta take a knee.
Yeah, agreed.
So,
so then at the 10-minute mark, so the Patriots get obviously after the interception they get the ball, and there was a strip sack of Mac Jones, which, dude,
he got decked. He got decked.
I don't think I've seen a quarterback hit the ground with more velocity than that before. Like it was almost like Mac Jones suddenly was 100 pounds. Like he just got nailed like a straw man, flat to the ground too. It was just like flat into the ground. And he got up. You could tell he was kind of dazed. I was kind of surprised he didn't get a concussion from that, honestly. And the ball was recovered by the Cowboys.
Who was that hit him?
No, Gregory? I looked it up. It was. Let me find the name. I have it right. It was Joey something, like Vosselvac or something like that. It was not a name I recognized until after I looked him up.
So depending on the QB hits, it's either Jourdan Lewis, Jaron Kearse, or Randy Gregory.
One
of those got the QB hits. I think it was Gregory, because he's the only one that has a sack.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of am I thinking of someone on the Patriots, maybe? I don't know, because they didn't sack Dak Prescott, though. I'm looking at these names here, and I don't recognize the name that I was looking at. Maybe I read the number wrong and I was looking at the wrong number. So yeah, I don't know who it was.
It was Gregory. It was Randy Gregory. It has to be. Look at the stats. It has to be him.
Did he have a forced fumble in the game?
Well, he's the only one that had a sack and he for a tackle for loss, and he has one of 3 guys who had Q hits. He's the only one that lines up with all of those. Because that's considered a sack.
Oh, that's true. He was the only one with sacks. Okay, yeah, then it was Randy Gregory. Then you're right. Okay. So yeah, and then the on that drive that the Cowboys are driving down, they get fairly close to the end zone. I don't remember what yard line they were on. Prescott throws a pass to Cedric Wilson, who was very active in this game. But the defender had put up a good defense. The ball comes out kind of when both players hit the ground. It was weird. It almost looked like he caught it, and then they both hit the ground, and then the ball squirted out. So he didn't complete the catch, so it wasn't a fumble. It just he wasn't able to maintain control. So
yeah, did you see the replay of that? I didn't see it, but I have a feeling the end zone ones aren't very consistent. You know, a guy can literally just run into the end zone, and the second he breaks the field, he can fumble and touchdown. But like, are we sure he didn't catch that ball?
I'm not 100% sure. I did not watch a close-up replay of it, so I don't know. It looked like there was enough time in there that maybe he did catch it. But I think you could argue either way because he was on the ground with the defender, and maybe he didn't like complete the, what's the term? Like complete the action of the process of a catch. Which, as we know, the NFL has been perfectly consistent on that rule, right? When remember the Rams game with the Rams Seahawks game with was it Jimmy Graham, where he took like 4 steps, and they were like, "Well, they need to figure out if he made a football move and completed the process of the catch." And we're like, he ran 10 yards with the ball.
That's just one of those moments. That was December of 2017. I visited Jeremy, and we were watching that game.
Well, I had gone to the Niners-Titans game, and then we came home and were watching replays on Game Pass, and we pulled up the Rams-Seahawks game because the Rams just decimated the Seahawks that day, and we wanted to watch that. And there was a play where Jimmy Graham caught a ball, and he took like 4 steps and then fumbled, and they were like reviewing it and acting as if it was some controversial play where they needed to figure out if he had completed the process of the catch, and we're like, he ran 10 yards with it.
Yeah, he's like he was falling to the ground, but he's like taking steps. Like took him many steps to fall to the ground. Like that's just one of the meme moments that Jeremy and I have in our life. That'll stick with us forever.
Yeah, like if that's not a football move, I don't know what one is, to be honest.
I think I actually said that quote.
So the Cowboys, after this apparently controversial play, I didn't see the replay, but it forces the Cowboys to kick a field goal. So they close the score 14-10, Patriots still up. And then talk about this. Okay, this next play, the block punt. Yeah.
The punt?
So
yes,
the Cowboys, dude, the ball was literally kicked into his chest. That's how close he was.
He fell on it. He felt like he just basically fell on the ball. It was epic. Yeah, go watch the replay, guys. This was a fantastic block punt. He gets kicked into him, and he just like lands on the ball, and then that's that.
After I saw that play, I was thinking, depending on where the ball contacted him with his chest pads, like you could crack a rib from that, from the power of a puncher's leg like that. So,
and the NFL footballs are, I think, harder than the ones you get from like the
And
store.
it's also coming at you
They're tougher.
how many miles per hour? I don't know what that is,
I
but
mean, considering how high they can kick, and it's got to be good speed, man. It's
yeah,
got to be good
we
speed.
could we could we
Yep.
could reverse engineer it by doing a projectile calculation, but we're not going to do that on air. Um, so so yeah,
That's fine.
so the Cowboys recover, and then another just crazy moment. So they drive down not that far. I think they only need about 20-25 yards. They get to the 1. And then Dak goes for a QB sneak, and the ball's just swatted out. It's swatted out of his hand.
Oh, by Bentley.
And before it breaks the
Bentley.
plane, it looked pretty clear to me that it was before it broke the plane. And the Pats recover. So that closes out the second quarter. Nobody scored. Then, so after halftime, the only actually note that I had for the third quarter was the touchdown pass to CD Lamb, the fade in the corner of the end zone.
Yes. Yeah. And he like tiptoed
Yeah,
to get his
yeah.
feet in. That was great.
Talk about a draft pick, man. CD Lamb is blossoming into one of the top receivers in the league. So the Cowboys take the lead 17-14, which is their first lead of the game, actually. And then we roll into the fourth quarter. And as opposed to the third quarter where I only had one note, I have like 8 for the fourth quarter. So, so the I guess the next Patriots drive was a nothing burger because then the Cowboys get the ball back. They're in field goal range, but then they let's see. No, that's not right. That was a later one where they got kind of pushed out of field goal range. This one they were driving and then they got a false start penalty. It forces them to kick a field goal. They go up. They go 20-14. Then there was that crazy Damian Harris, the 21-yard run where he like was dragging 4 guys with him and then bounced out and kept running and then got tackled.
Dude, I watched the game twice.
Yeah, go rewatch
that.
it was the fourth quarter with about 9 minutes left. There's a 21-yard by Damian Harris. And it just, if you can pull it up now, go ahead because it's okay.
I'm trying. Yeah.
Yeah, 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter, just around that. So then that secured a touchdown drive. Stevenson, I don't remember his first name, Stevenson for the Patriots. He got a touchdown. So the Patriots retake the lead 21-20. Then the Cowboys try to run the ball on, I think it was a third and 10, maybe. Dak runs 9 yards, so they stop him short of the line to gain, and they just totally miss a 50-yard field goal with 2:45 left. Did you find the clip?
I'm trying to find. I'm getting to time right now as a commercial.
And then, all right. So here, Mac Jones tries to pass to Kendrick Bourne, former 49er. And it bounces off his hands into Trayvon Diggs, pick 6. Cowboys do try to rush for a 2-point attempt, but don't make it. So the score is 26-21 after that score.
So interrupt. So I just watched the play. That was an epic run. And did you know? So I think that's Trayvon Diggs' second or third pick 6 this season.
I think yeah.
And did you know?
I don't know which of the two.
And did you know Trayvon Diggs? You know that Trayvon Diggs is Stefan's younger brother?
Oh, he is. I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah. They yeah, I because I was I was looking which I'll tell you something crazy later. I was watching a college football game, and that's how it came up. I was watching a game that he was in a couple years ago, but somehow, and then name just crossed me. I was like, wait a second, and yeah, Stephon Diggs, I think, is a few years older, but they're brothers.
Nice. Well, they're both insanely talented.
Yep.
So
Diggs now has more. What did I read? I think it compared the number of interceptions he has to, I think, a combined number of other teams. But I forgot.
The Niners might be included in that because they have one interception and it was a pick six, and they have one fumble, and they're tied with the Jaguars for the least takeaways in the league right now. So,
sorry, that's one more thing that is relevant. A little sad note for the Dolphins. So the interception that Tua had, the guy that had that for the Jags, that was his first interception in his career, and he's in his 8th season.
So I thought on that Mac Jones interception that on the pick six that Jones was in a position, I thought, to maybe make a play on Diggs, and he just gets slammed into the ground. Like, it didn't look like he gave a whole lot of effort to try to tackle him there. Not sure what he was thinking, but anyway, Trayvon Diggs gets the pick six. And then just the commentators called this a busted coverage. I actually thought it was just a bad play by the defender. So Jones completes that deep pass to Kendrick Bourne, who just runs straight forward for the touchdown, and they get a 2-point conversion. So the Pats go up 29-26. But on that play, it looked like there was a safety that was deeper than Bourne, but where Bourne caught the ball. But it looked like he was trying to make a play for the ball to try to intercept it, and ends up whiffing. And now there's no one behind Bourne, so Bourne just runs all the way to the end zone.
Yeah.
So Pats are up 29-26. Then Cedric Wilson makes another fantastic catch on the sideline that saves the Cowboys on a 4th and 4 with 1:25 left, keeps their drive going. And then there was this is the play I was thinking about earlier. So there was an unsportsmanlike conduct that takes the Cowboys out of field goal range, sets up a 3rd and 25. Dak completes to CeeDee Lamb, gets them close enough to that it got 24 yards on the play. So it was a 4th and 1. They kick a field goal with 21 seconds left, tie the game at 29 apiece. And then I think the Patriots just kneeled down. I think they tried rushing it once, and then they just kneeled down the rest of the way. So then the Patriots started overtime with the ball, but they had a 3 and out, or at least it wasn't a 3 and out, but they punted. I think they got 1 first down. And then they just, the Cowboys just kind of marched down. They're in field goal range, but then Dak throws a touchdown pass to CeeDee Lamb to win the game 35-29. And of course, got a little bit chippy at the end. CeeDee Lamb turned around and then waved goodbye to the defender. So that game, Joseph and I we were on the phone talking to each other as we were like looking at the live updates from the game. We weren't watching it, but we were checking out the updates, and then we were talking as the Cowboys won. So that was a good game. Overall comments, and then I'll let you say your piece, Joseph. Is this was a very undisciplined game. There were 4 turnovers, 17 penalties for 162 yards. Felt like the defense was very hot and cold for both teams. Like on what they would be getting turnovers and these crazy plays on the one hand, and then they'd be giving up gash yards and gash plays on the other hand. I thought it was a very, very physical game. I know we try to use that word sparingly, but it was a very physical game. I think of the Mac Jones strip sack, some of the hard running, and man, Dak Prescott is blessed with a very good offensive line. No sacks. I didn't get the chance to do this before we did the show tonight, but I wanted to look at how many times he's been sacked in the last like 3 years and compare that to some other quarterbacks, because Dallas has been known to have one of the better O-lines for the last many years, and that has only continued. He gets some really good protection back there. Did you have anything you wanted to add on this game before we move on?
Yeah. How do you get more American than having America's team play America's team, right? You have the Cowboys, who's America's team, playing at the Patriots. Yeah, you can't beat that.
The only way you do is if you have Tom Brady still playing with the Patriots. He's a Pirate now.
Oh man, yeah. Seriously though, if you put Tua and problems on the Cowboys offensive line, I think the Dolphins would have at least 4 wins. But we won't talk about that right now. Well, we'll have a segment probably in the coming weeks where we're talking our teams.
We'll have an indirectly related segment later in this episode about that. But
oh, that's right. Yes,
but
Phil,
yeah,
ideas. Yeah, right.
Yeah, Joseph and I are unexpectedly both lamenting our teams this season. So, all right, so we're gonna move on to our second segment of the night, which is Who Wrecked Face this week. So Joseph's gonna do quarterbacks, receivers, and one got wrecked, and I'm gonna do running backs, defensive, and a second got wrecked. So Joseph, I'll let you go first.
All right, so we've got Kirk Cousins, Vikings. He was 33 of 48. I think it's around a 68, 69% completion percentage. 370 passing yards on another 16 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks to beat the Panthers in the other overtime game. And then also, who we were just speaking of, Dak Prescott, 36 of 51 for 445 yards, 3 touchdowns, and that 1 pick. And then the receivers, who he threw to, right? CeeDee Lamb, 9 receptions, 149 yards and 2 touchdowns. And also, who was really good, was Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp also had 9 receptions, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then who got wrecked? The Chargers run game. They had 26 rushing yards with no touchdowns and a 2.2 average. Ooh, boy. And their best rusher was Justin Herbert. That is not good.
Yeah, that was a bit of a surprising flop of a game for the Chargers. So,
outside of Justin Herbert, the other 2 run performances were 10 rushes for 14 yards.
Okay, so I'll start with running backs. So Jonathan Taylor for the Colts, 14 carries for 145 yards, which is a 10.4 average, 2 touchdowns. And then none other than our just Mr. Consistent, Derrick Henry, 20 carries for 143 yards against the Bills for a 7.2 average and 3 touchdowns. I also texted Joseph about him on Monday night as this game was happening. I couldn't remember the last running back that we've had in the league that's been this consistently dominant week in, week out.
Damian Tomlinson. That was like
yeah,
what, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. I don't know. I bet we can find some names, but the fact that they're not immediately coming to our mind shows the point.
Yeah, I mean we've had obviously guys that have put up overall statistics that are on par with Henry, but not the same. They tend to be more hot and cold as far as the average is what matches, but the weekly performance, they have a lot more valleys. Henry's had one bad game this season, and it wasn't even like a bad game, I don't think. Let me just pull up his stats because I'm really curious about this. So I have the overall stats open here.
His first game was not good, but then he's had great games ever since.
Yeah,
but like on a high level, we're not talking just 90 to 100 yards, 182, 113, 157, 130, 100, like that's insane. And then you go back to last year, and he had a few duds in there, but like he had a lot. He had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 100-yard plus games, 3 200+ yard games. I mean, yeah, the guy's been incredibly consistent. When's the last time we've had kind of consistency in a 1.5, 2 year span? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, he's like, I mean, even 17 carries for 58 yards, which is a 3.4 average, is not. It's not bad. It's just mediocre, right? And then every other game has been over 100 yards with over a 4 average. So he's had 3 games with 3 touchdowns. So yeah, it's just it's a special thing to watch right now. So if you're a football fan, or if you're kind of on the periphery being a football fan, like this guy is potentially like a history making kind of player. So keep tabs on him. He's worth it. Okay, so I also have defensive players. So Alex Singleton, linebacker for the Eagles, 15 tackles and a pass defended. That, my friends, is what we call a tackle machine. 15.
How many?
15. 15 is my tackle machine mark. Max Crosby, who's starting to make a little bit of a name for himself, defensive end for the Las Vegas Raiders, had 6 tackles, 3 sacks, a tackle for loss, and a pass defended in their domination over the Broncos on Sunday. And then lastly, thank you for just ruining the Seahawks season on Sunday, or was it Sunday night? TJ Watt, 7 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, and 3 passes defended.
And a couple of those were game time or prime time.
Yeah, like clutch moments. He had a I think it was a strip sack. So I don't know. I didn't know I didn't have a forced fumble mark for him. I thought he did have a forced fumble. He did have a forced fumble. So let me pull up the score real fast. Week 6, Monday night, box score. Let's see. I go off of the ESPN box scores. They're usually accurate, but let's see. Pittsburgh defensive, TJ Watt. Oh, you know what? It doesn't list in the box score. It actually doesn't list forced fumbles. You have to go to recent games for that player, and then go to the overall stats. Yeah, he did have a forced fumble, and I think that was that strip sack in overtime, wasn't it? When he sacked Geno Smith.
Yeah, I think he had a sack that helped them go to overtime, and then he had the forced fumble in overtime. He had some pretty clutch plays there.
And then on Got Wrecked, similar to the Chargers rushing that Joseph already brought up, was the Lions rushing, who had an even worse average. They did have a touchdown, but they were 18 carries for 36 yards, which is a 2.0 average. Okay, so moving on to our third segment of the night, commentators say the darndest things. This was a quote that Joseph found, but I had to help transcribe it. So this was from the Rams at Giants game. We, when in doubt, go to Mark Schlereth. So They were having
Like,
some conversation about like 2 and 3 point stances for offensive linemen and didn't really get much of the context, but Shalarith said, I would have gotten the 3 point stance, but I'd be afraid that I would split my pants.
so yeah, no, Jeremy had asked if I'd gotten any quotes, and I hadn't, and I wanted to watch some more games before the show, and I didn't have time to watch as many. I didn't have time to really watch any. And I was like, oh man, okay, go to Mark Schlereth. And so I had to look up online, figure out which game Mark Schlereth did this week, and lo and behold, found one. Also found out that his nickname when he played was like the Stink, and the reason was because he would just pee playing. If he had to go to the restroom, he would just go.
I don't. He can't be the only one.
No, especially back in the 80s, 90s. He played in the 90s. Nowadays maybe guys do it a little bit less because of how televised and everything is, and zoomed in.
Didn't Booger McFarland get in trouble for saying something about that? It was a couple years ago. He said something about guys like pooping during the game. It was some weird. Like someone had said something about them peeing, and then he was like, "Oh, guys do a lot more than that on the field," or something like that. So, yeah, I would be curious to know how many guys just pee on the sideline, because they don't have a bathroom there, right? They'd have to go to the locker room, which is what you can't if you're suited for the game, you cannot go back to the locker room. So, if you don't take care of business during halftime, you're gonna have to take care of it in your pants. Okay, so our fourth segment is our special segment for the night, and this segment is entitled tanking. So yes, we are going to talk about the concept of tanking, and first, I guess a little bit about what it is, in case you're unfamiliar with it. Which, if you're watching the show and you don't know what tanking is, then what are you doing with your life? We're going to talk about whether it's an ethical practice or not, and Joseph found an interesting article on that. And then lastly, we'll talk about what circumstances should a team tank in, if any. So I guess I'll just lead off with a quick definition, and then I'll let Joseph take over because he was the one that found the article. So essentially, tanking is when you hit a point in the season where you're not going anywhere, and so you decide to essentially lose games or give yourself a lower probability of winning games on purpose so that you can get a better draft pick next season. That's essentially what it is.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the article was, I think, less on the ethics of it. I saw some parts on that, but it talked about how the part that I got that was unique from it was they said that tanking, it does not occur at the player and coach level, but it occurs at the front office level. And that made me thinking, that kind of makes sense, because when do we really see players not? And they gave some examples of like when teams won, when it kind of hurt them, and teams playing hard, and when's the last time we've seen players, whether out of just ego or wanting to compete, or maybe incentives in their contract, really consistently playing lazy. But if you put out a roster to be a higher level decision that is less likely to win, then you're putting guys who are trying to compete out there, but their level of competition is going to be less than what it could be, hence losing more games and getting better draft picks. So it's been interesting to think, okay, maybe tanking doesn't really happen at the lower level, but in terms of the roster and plays that they're trying or methods or whatever, maybe there is a strategy for tanking there. And I read one, I think, headline or comment saying, it's kind of still of a strategy. And I think it is. I think there can be, and that's what we want to discuss today, is can there be a strategy in tanking? I think the answer is yes. If you are at a place where you have no chance of the playoffs, and having more, unless my objection would be, unless you're practicing a bunch of crazy plays and experimenting with like offensive and defensive lineups, like offensive defensive line, and how they're lining up and experimenting to get better practice for the next season, unless you're explicitly doing very unique things, which could be risky anyways, then I think it can be strategic to tank. There doesn't seem to be any official rules, though certainly it's frowned upon. They actually had found something where they talked about the Dolphins a couple years ago, right? Tanking for Tua, and talking about how the Dolphins are looking, really terrible the first few games. They had a terrible start, and they ended up better than what people thought. And seems like that they were possibly considering making a committee to look into that because the Dolphins were so bad. 2019, showed up a few times in my search. So I think tanking at the player level, coaching level, I think it is unethical. I don't think it's illegal in terms of the rule. No, illegal is the wrong term. I don't think it's not allowed given the rules of the game. But you can't throw games. So it's like, the only way to balance it where you're not throwing games but still being competitive is if you're just trying crazy plays and or changing up the roster so much, right? That's the only way you can kind of have that balance. So I'll just say one more thing and let Jeremy respond and go bounce off each other from there. Is I think that it can be advantageous to tank, and I'm actually not against the idea. How I would want it to happen is what I mentioned earlier about players and teams doing very unique plays, like basically experimenting, using the rest of the season to experiment, so that to be advantageous the following year when you're not tanking. So you're almost like doing the crazy plays and the trick plays and the fakes and experimenting with your offensive line and who has best chemistry and so forth, where each game is almost an experiment of how you can make, accumulated though marginal improvements for the following season, but still are doing that and hoping that you win games to get a better draft pick. That's what I would say.
Those are good thoughts, and there's so much going on with this. The more that we talk about it, the more that I think about it, because I think you're right to delineate the lower level, meaning the player level, the individual player level, and possibly also the coaching level, from the overarching who's on the roster, how is the roster made up, who's suited up for game time level. And I think at the lower level, you would never want to try to tank at the player level, because that'll do a couple of negative things that might be irrecoverable. One is that if you basically, in order for a player to tank, that means that someone would have to tell them, go out there and don't do your best, which basically does two things. Number one, it sends a message that even that player's best is not enough to win games, which is therefore why they're tanking. And number two, it sends the message that we're not taking this seriously, so we're not taking this season seriously, so why should you? Right? So guys get undisciplined. They're not going to spend that extra 5 minutes practicing a few extra reps. They're not going to show up to the building early in the morning to watch film. They're not going to do the things that all the best players in the league do to get better and take that next step. So I think you would absolutely decimate the locker room if you were to do that on an individual level. And on the coaching level, I mean, talk about the credibility you would lose by doing something like that. So I think that there's definitely, like, at a minimum, you have to say, and I think we can agree on this, that the players that you put on the field have to be trying as hard as they can. So then the question is, then you have two options. One is, who are you putting on the field? And the second question is, what are they doing on the field? And that's what you brought up, which is, one, how do you construct the team that comes out that week, that shows up and it gets on the field? And then also, what kind of plays are they running? Are they, going for it on every fourth down? Are they sending extra pressure during punts? Are they trying their, 80 yard, like just running receivers really deep routes every run, like not running the ball at all, like different things that are, to practice certain scenarios. I think that as far as that's concerned, I think that there's very limited value in making your whole game plan be around like, oh, let's practice specific types of plays, because number one, what that does is it gives every other team in the league film on those plays. And number two, those plays are usually only a small percentage of the plays that you would play, and then the players aren't getting practice running the majority of the plays that they will be running that are more run-of-the-mill that they need practice on. And so you're not really adding a whole lot of value or experience to your players by doing that. So really, I feel like that almost gets eliminated just by sort of by deduction. So then you lead to that your only option is to say, well, the players we're going to put out on the field are just not going to be as good, and therefore that's going to lead to us losing more games. And I think that is essentially then you're treating it like a preseason game, right? You might put out more backups, you might rotate guys on the lines more often, you might try out more like rookie corners, rookie linebackers, rookie receivers, etc. And in that case, I think you could do that, but I think it would be really hard. I think there would be a really fine line between your veteran players who feel like they've earned their time to be out there and the backup players that haven't earned their time to be out there but are basically being forced to be out there. How do you handle that potential locker room atomic bomb? And if you're in a situation where you're even talking about tanking, that usually means that you're good enough to at least win enough games that your first round draft pick the next year just isn't very optimal, which would be like, I don't know, maybe winning 5 or 6 games as opposed to 2. So if you win 6 games in the NFL, that usually means you've got some good players on your team, but your team just isn't coalescing and the rest of the talent's pretty bad, right? If you're naturally winning 2 games, that means you basically have no talent on your roster, and even if you try as hard as you can, you're still not going to win any more games, so you wouldn't be tanking, right? So there's a fine line there, and I think if we talk about specifically the instance of the Dolphins, I'd be curious to know from you, Joseph, how you would pull that off in this case, because there's a lot of talent on that team, and the biggest problem seems to be that they're just not in rhythm right now. There's something that's just off about the team. Not every position group's perfect, like you pointed out. The O-line is really struggling, but how would you communicate that to the veteran players? How would you get worse players on the field to ensure that you'd lose more games?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's one I didn't think about. I'm going to struggle with that one because that's what makes this Dolphin team so weird is, the talent. Look at the talent, the win ratio, and that's a very high ratio. Bad. You want that to be close to 1-to-1, and right now it's a very high ratio, which is awful, and it doesn't make sense. Even with the offensive line problems, like having some high draft picks and pick offensive linemen the last couple of years, and it's just not working out. And having a great receiver core, and a good defense, but yet if you look at offense in terms of yards and points, and defense in terms of yards and points, I think we're in the bottom 4 or 5 for all 4 categories. And given our talent, it just doesn't make sense. It is not adding up. I feel like we should easily be top 10 or 12 in all of those categories, and we're not. It's confusing. So, um, maybe not offensive yards, but definitely defense and point and offensive points. I think we do that. So I don't even know how we would tank, because we would have to fundamentally take out our talented players, the roster, which then would convey to everyone, right, the NFL, the fans, and the players, that the Dolphins are tanking. So I don't even know how we could do it, let alone do it without people really noticing, because people had high expectations for this team. You know, I think a lot of people in the sports world, not just fans like myself, had an 11 to 12 win expectation for this team, and now I'm hoping we get 9. And I think nine's the limit, nine's the cap. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's regardless of what you do, it would be a tough line to draw, and um, so I think you end up in a situation where maybe you just kind of hope that the team continues to be out of rhythm and therefore results in more games lost and therefore a better draft pick. But I think for the long term health of the team, I think it's better for the team to learn how to win together, and um two has just got to get that experience. And if it means, if it means maybe changing the offensive scheme a little bit and that takes some time to learn and that means some rust and losing games because of that, that's fine. That's not like an intentional tank. That's just the result of the growing pains that you need to go through in order to get better. Maybe they just need to be a little bit more purposeful about that. Because I mean, the gunslinging offense that Fitzpatrick was running last year, like that doesn't really suit Tua's play style, really. I mean, I feel like you kind of have to run different offenses between those players, and maybe they haven't fully figured out how to transition Tua to that offense. So
We'll see. What I can say is this: the Deshaun Watson trade isn't looking very feasible. Now I was telling you about our draft capital, and we don't really have much for next year. You know, because of that Eagles trade up, we don't really have the draft capital. But the Eagles sure do. My goodness, if the Eagles wanted, the Eagles could give up Jalen Hurts, 2 first-round picks, um, and maybe some later picks if the Texans were desperate enough, and get Watson, and the Eagles still have a first-round pick left. So now the Eagles have the capital. So I don't even think getting Watson is good, because this season's kind of already done, and him coming in now after not playing, and we're just we're kind of stuck. We're stuck with Tua. Didn't necessarily a problem. I don't have. Hey, let's get Tua out of here yet. But oh man, it's a bummer to have the talent like the team, because this would be like the similar team that I would want for next year. Like, this is the team that I want, and so they need to click. That's all that's missing. So it feels like it's a wasted season almost, because it's not like I would really want that many changes going into next season unless there are players that just clearly go out to be busts.
yeah, I see what you're saying. All right, so let's move into our fifth segment of the night, which is our tricky picks. So this last week was not so great of a week for either of us. Joseph was 2-4. I was a putrid 1-5, bringing both of our season totals up to this point to 10-17. So let's see if we can rectify that a little bit. Joseph, what are our picks for this week?
All right, Falcons Dolphins, which will be higher? Kyle Pitts receiving yards or Miami's rushing yards, not including Tua rushing yards?
What's Pitts averaging this season?
I think he's averaging like 50 to 70 around there.
Um, I'll say uh I'm going to say Miami rushing is going to be higher.
Okay. And remember, it's Miami rushing -2. Okay. Will Tua have have at least passing touchdowns and 275 total yards?
Sorry, you said 2 passing touchdowns?
Yes, two. Will he have at least 2 passing touchdowns and 275 total yards?
Uh,
Compound statement.
no.
All right, I said yes.
I think he's going to have the touchdowns, but not the yards.
Fair enough. Yeah, I put 250, I think, at first. 250. I bumped up 275. Colts Niners. Will Lance have all of the following: a rushing touchdown, a passing touchdown, 50 or more rushing yards, 175 or more
So that's a
passing
good
yards?
one, but we might need to axe that because Jimmy practiced and he did not yesterday. So it's looking like Jimmy's probably going to start against the Colts.
Okay, let's axe it then.
That's not confirmed yet, but it looks like that's what's going to happen.
Well, what would you pick regardless? And then if he plays,
what was the okay? Well,
start.
Yeah, we can. What we'll do is I'll pick, and then if he ends up starting, we'll use it, and if not, we won't use it. Can you read it off again?
So yeah. All right. Rushing touchdown, passing touchdown, 50 or more rushing yards, and 175 or more passing yards. Like having all of those.
Yes.
Same. Yeah, I first made it 150 passing yards. That was too easy. Bumped it up. All right. Saints Seahawks. All right. 3 possibilities. They're an under, an over, or in the range. Give Geno Smith and Jameis Winston their combined total yards, right, rushing and passing, and their combined completions. Is it going to be under 450, over 475, or in the range of 450 to 475?
I'm going to say in the range of 450 to 475.
All right, I said the same. All right, last one. This one's a doozy. But we'll make it easy is if you hear any of these, I'm going to list out a bunch of criteria. And if you hear any of them that you think will happen, then just stop.
Okay.
Say yes. That's so. Will either of the following happen? A bunch of them. All right. Will either of the following happen? A, 1. The Bengals win by 14 or more. 2. The Ravens win by 3 or less. 3. Burrow and Jackson combine for 8 passing touchdowns. 4. Jackson has 125 or more rushing yards. 6. Chase has 3 receiving touchdowns. 7. Chase has 160 or more receiving yards. 8. Burrow and Jackson combine for 4 or more interceptions. 9. The combined score is 80 or more. And lastly, the longest play of the game, including kickoff and punt, is 77 or more yards.
I'm going to say yes, but only on that last one. That's the only reason I'm saying yes.
Ooh. Okay, so the 77 plus yards. All right, I like it. You know what? I said no, and I originally had 75 yards, and I bumped it up to 77, and I kind of thought, ooh, that last one is the one that could maybe do it.
Okay. Yeah, there's some lofty stats in there.
Yeah, and that was the point. I wanted to make them all pretty lofty. If is there any of them that you think? I think the ones that be more likely would probably be the Ravens only winning by 3 or less, or maybe Jamar Chase having 160 plus yards. Those are probably maybe Lamar Jackson with 125
Maybe,
rushing yards.
yeah. Those are all
The
pretty
rest,
big numbers.
yeah. So, all right, that's it
Cool.
for
All right,
Pick a
so
Pick.
our sixth and final segment of the night is our weekly predictions. So this last week, week 6, I was 10-4, and Joseph was 11-3. We differed on 3 games: Chargers at Ravens, Cardinals at Browns, and Raiders at Broncos. I picked Broncos and Browns, who both lost, so Joseph got a game on me. Joseph's now 62-32, which is 66%, and I'm 60-34, which is 63.8%. So you now have 2 games on me. So our games for week 7, there are only 13 games this week. Starting off with the barn burner, Broncos at Browns. I think the Browns bounce back this week, and I think the Broncos are running out of gas.
I agree. And because their first 3 wins were against some pretty weak teams. So, yeah, going Browns. All right, Washington at Green Bay. Green Bay.
The AFC Championship game rematch, Chiefs at Titans. Was it the
Bills? It was Bills Chiefs.
Oh, that's right. It was Bills. Was it Bills Titans in the division game? No, that would have been. I'm thinking of, so in 2019 was the Ravens
You're thinking of
Titans.
Patriots.
What
Ravens,
was last
Titans.
year?
That's the one that for the championship game. It was.
No,
Bills,
you're right. It was Bills Chiefs, but weren't the Titans in the division round?
Yeah, but I don't know who they played though.
Anyway, I made a false statement, but my pick is Titans.
Yeah, this one's tough. I usually when there's tough games that play Monday nights, I put a little notes. I picked the games before, and I made a note here, and I'm going Titans because of the Monday night game. They're at home again, and Tannehill did not have a great game. They still love the Bills to score a bunch of points, and Henry was great. So it's like, you know what? He's been playing great all season, and the Chiefs aren't. I mean, they pulled away in the fourth quarter against the Redskins, but still, for most of that game, it was looking kind of iffy.
Joseph, you just said Redskins. You're canceled from this show. You've been canceled.
Oh man. All right, find another co-host.
Yeah, I agree. The Chiefs need to figure themselves out. So okay, so we agree on those 3 so far. You got the next
one. Falcons at Miami. I'm going Miami. This is the trash game, though, I think, or one of them. But Miami's got to win.
I also picked Dolphins.
All right.
Yeah. Jets at Patriots. I'm going Patriots. Although I'm expecting this to be a stealth good game.
Yeah, I think the Jets. You know what? That Jets defensive line, has shown up, and so who knows? Panthers at Giants.
They are. I thought maybe they were. I thought maybe they were like on a slight uptick, but no, they are so bad.
Well, maybe they were on a slight uptick and then they fell over and are now on a downtick, right, perpetually.
Maybe they split their pants.
Yeah, they're bad.
I'm also going Panthers on that one. Next one is Bengals at Ravens. This is one of those games I don't feel good about because it could easily be an upset, but I'm going Ravens because they're at home and they have the offense.
Yeah, pick at Ravens as well. And if you think about it, they should have beat the Raiders. They should have beat the Raiders, right? That was kind of a lost game. But they played some good teams, right? They played the Chargers. They played the Chiefs. Who else did they play? They played some other good teams. Jeremy, can you look that up really quick?
Yes.
While I talk. So the Ravens have played some good teams. They're 5-1. They're clicking. They're at home. I think the Bengals are better than we thought, but they're not a top 5 team, top 7 team, and I would put the Ravens, consider them up there. And think that Lamar Jackson didn't even have a really good game last week, still whomped the Chargers. I think this could be close, and I wouldn't, again, like Jeremy said, wouldn't be surprised for an upset. But you got to go Ravens here. I think it's Ravens. I think this is like a 62 to 65%.
So I pulled up the Ravens on ESPN, and the second article was a little video clip, and the blurb said Stephen A. calls on Lamar Jackson to prove his greatness in the postseason.
Like his third year.
Stephen A. I hope he's around for a long time. He's so obnoxious and purposefully that way, and is just so over the top. It's funny to me.
A lot of guys are. I think honestly, I've seen a lot of ESPN where like a lot of guys on ESPN, like that's their way of trying to.
Yeah, they're just rambunctious on purpose. So the Ravens they lost to the Raiders. They beat the Chiefs. They beat the Chargers. They beat the Colts, and then they beat Broncos and Lions. So they've had a decent schedule so far, and but they have not played any division games yet. So this is their first division matchup, and I think this division is going to be won or lost in the division games, I think. We'll see this next stretch. They have a stretch where they play versus Browns, at Steelers, at Browns, versus Packers, at Bengals. So that'll be a good late in the season. That'll be a interesting one to watch.
If they win 3 of those, that would be.
I think so.
All right. Next is Eagles at Raiders. Going Same. Raiders.
Lions at Rams. I mean, yeah, I'm Rams.
Yes, that's gonna. Speaking of bad, Texans at Cardinals. Oh my goodness, that's gonna. Dude, I think the combined winning differential between those two games is going to be at least 40 points.
I think minimum. So too.
It might be 60. No joke.
Yeah, I'm going to Cardinals as well, and then Bears at Bucks. I'm going Bucks.
Same. Colts at Niners. This one's tough.
It shouldn't be though. It shouldn't be. I mean, it shouldn't meaning if everyone was playing the way that they were supposed to be, it shouldn't be.
Fair. But I'm just gonna slightly go Niners. Ever so slightly, like 52.
Is it because you got canceled and you want to be back on the show? Is that why you're going Niners? So I'm going Niners too, but this is the turning point for them. If they lose this game, their season is over. This is a must-win game for them. So I'm putting all the chips on the table and going Niners on this one. And then I think I'm up for the last one. Saints at Seahawks. This is one of the more difficult ones just because the Seahawks are at home and they actually put up a pretty good fight against the Steelers on the road. But I'm going Seahawks, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this go the other way.
So, I think it's our first difference. I'm going Saints. It's our first difference.
You just got canceled for yawning also. Yeah, this was a tough one. This was like a coin flip for me.
Yeah, I think I just have a gut feeling on this one.
I'll look at the over-under for it.
-2.
Yeah, it's going to be something like that. It's oh, wow. It's Saints -5.
It's Saints -5? Wow.
So, okay, yeah, so our only difference was Saints at Seahawks. I picked all home teams. We both picked all home teams except for the Panthers, and then you pick the Saints.
Yeah. No, that was it worked out. Whereas last week a lot of road
So
teams.
check this out. This is great. These lines this week are phenomenal. So Lions at Rams, Rams minus 15, and Texans at Cardinals, Cardinals minus 17 and a half, and then Bears at
Wow.
Bucks, Bucks minus 12 and a half.
Yeah, those are some fun games. If people wanted to gamble, those would be some fun football games to gamble on.
All right, so we decided on. Oh, by the way, so Bills, Cowboys, Vikings, Steelers, Chargers, and Jaguars are all on bye this week. And our game of the week is going to be Bengals at Ravens. Of course, as we've been saying, unless it stinks and we decide to pick another game, which we've been doing quite frequently because many of our games of the week so far this season have been mediocre at best. So we will swap that to another game if needed. So Joseph, unless you had anything else, nope. Then that is a wrap for this week's episode. If you did not fall asleep during tonight's episode or any of our past episodes, please like, share, and subscribe here on YouTube, as those are free ways for you to support our show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at The Practice Squad and at Neuralizer_. Just as a reminder, if you've missed past episodes, you can watch or listen to them right here on my YouTube channel. Tonight's show will be available immediately after we go offline. As always, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
As Jeremy said, we don't know how we're going to disappoint you. We just know that we will. Have a good night.